Hey, fourth graders, it's Mrs. Ramsey again, here to read Out of My Mind by Sharon Draper. Yesterday we left off with chapter 18, and Melody had gotten her MetaTalker, and she was studying like crazy to prove Mr. Dimming that she could actually take this test and win the test and be part of the quiz team. So she is, the last part where we left off, she was not going back to room H5, she was studying. And in the very end, it said nobody from H5 seemed to notice at all that she was missing. So I feel like she was feeling kind of left out again. But here we go, chapter 19. The week zipped by. I studied at school every day with Catherine, after school every day with Mrs. V, and every evening at home as well. I reviewed words from all the levels on my board. I practiced spelling long words and matching facts and dates. I made up my own games. Mom quizzed me about flowers and medical terms, and Dad asked me questions about economics and retail management and sports. I swallowed it all. Sometimes I sit in my room and just type in new sentences for Elvira to say, one letter at a time. It takes hours, but once an entry is in, all I have to do is push one button and the whole sentence will be spoken for me. I guess the question I get asked the most, in a lot of strange variations, is, what's wrong with you? People often want to know if I'm sick or if I'm in pain or if my condition can be fixed. So I prepared two answers, one that is polite but kind of wordy, and one that is a little smart-mouthed. To those who genuinely are concerned, I push a button to say, I have spastic bilateral quadriplegia, also known as cerebral palsy. It limits my body, but not my mind. I think the last part is pretty cool. To people like Molly and Claire, I say, we all have disabilities. What's yours? I couldn't wait to use that one. When I showed Mrs. V, she laughed so hard she snorted. Now, it's the Saturday before the tryouts, and Mrs. V and I are sitting outside on our front porch. I'm wearing a light jacket, but it's one of those rare, warm February days that fools the hyacinths into thinking spring is here. I want to warn the little buds and say, wait, it's going to snow next week. Stay put for another month. But every year, the early spring flowers shiver in the last snow of the season. We watch wisps of clouds hover over us. A canary-colored goldfinch is perching on the railing, looking at the empty bird feeder dangling above it. If he could talk, I'd bet he'd ask for thistle and more warm days like this. What would you do if you could fly? Mrs. V asks as she glances from the bird to me. Is that on the quiz? I ask, grinning as I type. I think we've studied just about everything else, Mrs. V chuckles. I'd be scared to let go, I type. Afraid you'd fall? She asks. No, afraid it would feel so good, I'd just fly away. Took me a long time to type that. She's quiet for a very long time. Finally, she says, you are a bird, Melody, and you will fly on Monday when you take the test. I hear our front door slam shut next door, and I wave to Mom and Penny as they wander over to the porch. Butterscotch, clearly happy to be unleashed, bounds next to him, sniffing the base of every tree. Penny walks with such determination, her face alternating between frowns and smiles as she concentrates on marching down the path between our two houses, then climbing the front steps with both hands and both feet. She's wearing her puffy winter jacket and the hat of the day, a blue straw thing that is scrunched and crooked from her sitting on it so many times. Poor Doodle, of course, drags behind her. Oh, Dee Dee, she cries as she finally gets to the top step. I'm still boggled by how easily she does stuff. I touch the sleeve of Mrs. V's dress and I think about what she asked me. Freedom, I type. pointing at Penny. Freedom. Mrs. Valencia nods, and she understands. Oh, what a glorious day, Mom says, breathing deeply. You think we're done with winter? More cold coming, I type. You're right, but it sure is a nice preview, Mom says as she unzips Penny's jacket. How's the study team progressing? Butterscotch rests at the bottom of the steps. I swear the dog looks like she's smiling. Good, I say through my metatalker. Violet, you're amazing, Mom says. The time and effort you put into teaching her and getting her ready for this test and... She breaks off, blinking hard. You must have taught her thousands of words. Nobody seems to be amazed that Penny is soaking up and learning thousands of words, Mrs. V replies with a shrug. Melody's no different. Mom nods in agreement. I know you're right, but it's just so much harder for Melody. No, it's harder for us. We have to figure out what's in her head. I'm getting tired of them talking about me like I'm in another room. I turn the volume up on my machine loud. Let's have cookies. Mrs. V stands up. I hear you, Penny babe. Let me find us some sweets. As she heads into the house, she turns to Mom and says softly, Miss Melody has always had a special place in my heart. Heartburn, I type. That gets them both laughing. Mrs. V returns a few minutes later with a plate of hot chocolate chip cookies and 2 servings of milk in red sippy cups decorated with Disney princesses. I hate to admit it, but a sippy cup makes it easier for me to drink. Cookies! Penny screams. She reaches for the plate, but Mom pulls her arm back. Mrs. V gives Mom 2 cookies on a paper towel. Mom blows on one, then gives it to Penny, who proceeds to stuff the whole thing in her mouth. Look at my little Penny pig, Mom says, laughing. Mrs. V breaks my cookie into segments, then places a piece in my mouth. Although I'm a caramel lover, these cookies must have been made in chocolate heaven. I swallow while Mrs. V gives me sips of cool milk. Cookies smush down so great with milk. I don't even have to try to chew. I'd love to have enough control to feed myself, but that's on my list of things I'd wish for, along with walking and taking myself to the bathroom and, oh yeah, flying. Interrupting my thoughts, Mrs. V asks, what continent produces the largest crop of cacao beans, which give us this chocolate? Africa, I type. She nods and gives me another sip of milk. And which state produces the most milk? California, I reply. I think you're ready, Melody, Mrs. V announces. Mom reaches over and strokes my cheek. You're gonna rock on Monday. Then what? I type. Well, then you run for president, Mrs. V interjects. Yeah, right, I tap out. Just then, Dad pulls into our driveway. Boy, does our big old car need a trip to the car wash. I guess Chuck got off early today, Mom says, looking pleased. Maybe we can get an early dinner. Dad gets out of the car, stretches, and waves at us. Penny's face lights up. Oh, Daddy, she calls out. Standing up, she looks at us with a devilish grin. Don't you dare, Mrs. V warns in her I mean it voice. Penny ignores her. Go bye-bye in car. She loves to ride in the car. It doesn't matter where, the store, the post office, as long as she gets to ride in her little car seat in the back. Doesn't make much sense to me. She falls asleep as soon as we turn the first corner. She hurriedly bumps down a couple of the porch steps, then 2 more, waiting for a reaction from Mom. Penny Marie Brooks, you bring your little buns right back up here, my mother cries out. When Mom uses all 3 names, it's serious. Penny reaches the bottom of the steps, looks back at us, smirks, and says, See, Daddy? Gotta go to work. Then, as fast as her short little legs will carry her, she bolts for Dad. Mom, of course, has other ideas. So does Butterscotch, who jumps up, gives 3 short barks, almost like Mom using 3 names, and calmly walks in front of Penny to block her path. Good dog, Mom says. Come back here, little cookie face. By this time, she has hurried down the porch steps and retrieved my sister. This child, she says to my dad, who is ambling over to us, is an escape artist. I need 4 sets of eyes with her. She wipes the chocolate off Penny's face and nuzzles her. Good thing you've got Butterscotch, Dad says as he brushes the top of the dog's head. How's my shiny copper penny today? Dad kisses Mom on the cheek and takes Penny from her. Penny manages to rub the rest of the chocolate from her hands onto the front of Dad's shirt. Just what I always wanted, Dad says as he glances down. Chocolate-covered clothes. The napkin Mrs. V passes him only smears it more. Dad just laughs. Go work, Daddy? Oh, Daddy just got home. Give me a break, kiddo. He hands Penny gently to Mrs. V and then sits with Mom on the porch swing. And how's my favorite melody? He asks me. Super, I type on my machine. Ready for your competition? Yep, I tap. Dad gets up and squats in front of me. You're going to ace that test and make that quiz team. And I can tell he means it. I believe in me, and my family does, and Mrs. V. It's the rest of the world I'm not so sure of. Chapter 20. I was right about the weather today. I hope the little crocus buds have tiny wool blankets because the temperature dipped back down to the 30s, and our classroom was chilly when we rolled in this morning. The public address system blared the usual Monday morning announcements about bake sales and soccer practice. Most of the time, nobody in H5, not even Mrs. Shannon, pays much attention to them. The craziness of our morning usually takes over. Mrs. Shannon had managed to get us a Wii game system. I don't know how. Willie loves the baseball program. I've learned to keep out of his way while he pretends to hit the ball as he watches the screen. Sometimes his swings go wide. A hit, he'll cry out with triumph, and then he'll try to run the bases in the classroom. Even Freddie can't keep up with him. I usually sit in a corner with my headphones on, trying to tune it all out. But today, I listened carefully to the bulletin. My heartbeat sped up and I jerked my arms with excitement as I heard the principal say, all students who wish to try out for the Whiz Kids quiz team, please report to Mr. Dimming's room after school. I stayed nervous all day. I didn't tell Rose what I planned to do. I thought about it, but then I decided not to. Suppose she said it was a stupid idea. I didn't think I could take that. Then I spilled tomato soup all over the front of my blouse at lunchtime. Even though Catherine tried to clean it up, you just can't get red stuff out of a white shirt. I felt like a slob. I wish I had thought of that this morning. I could have told Mom to pack a change of clothes for me. It's still hard to remember that I can say stuff like that now. I didn't go out for inclusion classes all day. I wanted to study until the last minute. But as soon as the last bell rings, I grab Catherine's arm. Hurry, I type, to Mr. D's room. Even though I'm in the electric chair, we set it to manual so she could push me. I'm too nervous to drive. When we arrive at Mr. Dimming's room, a group of kids from my history class are already there, whispering together and going over note cards. They look up in surprise when Catherine wheels me in. Hi, Melody, Rose says. What are you doing here? Her voice doesn't sound as friendly as usual. Quiz team, I type. She can't be on the team, I hear Claire whisper to Jessica, wrinkling up her nose. She's from the retard room. Molly thinks that's really funny. She screeches like a blue jay when she laughs. I decide to ignore them, even though I feel my anger rising. I have to stay focused. Several more students file into the room from both grades 5 and 6. I don't know the sixth graders very well. They have different recess times. I wonder if they're smarter. They've had more time to learn stuff. A few kids point at me and whisper. When Mr. Dimming hurries in carrying a stack of papers sealed in plastic, he scans the room to see who's there. He frowns slightly when he sees me, but he sets the test papers on his desk and greets us all. "Welcome," he says. "I'm so glad that so many of you have chosen to try out for the competition this afternoon. It's going to be challenging as well as fun. Are there any questions before we get started?" Connor, of course, raises his hand. "Yes, Connor," Mr. Dimming says with a good-natured sigh. Will we get pizza and stuff during practice like last year?" "Don't you think you need to make the team first?" his friend Rodney yells out. "Rodney is right. Let's do one thing at a time." Mr. Dimming lifts the stack of test papers from his desk and holds them like a treasure. "I hold in my hand the official test questions from the National Whiz Kid headquarters in Washington, D.C. I will be reading the questions to you, just as it is done in real competitions. And then," he stops and stares. Everyone looks around to see what has interrupted him. It's me. Mr. Dimming taps the stack of papers for a moment, clears his throat, and addresses Catherine. "You know, I don't think it's appropriate for Melody to be here. This is not a recreational activity just for fun. The purpose of this meeting is to choose our official team." He isn't even speaking to me. He's looking right over my head at Catherine as if I were invisible. Now, I'm really mad. I turn up the volume on my machine very loud. "I am here to take the test." Mr. Dimming blinks. "Melody, I don't want your feelings to get injured. This test is very hard." "I am very smart." "I just don't want you to be hurt, Melody." He sounds sincere, sort of. "I'm tough," I type. "You go, girl," Rose suddenly says from the front of the room. A few other kids clap their support. That makes me feel a little better. Just a little. Catherine speaks up. "By law, she cannot be excluded. You know that, sir." "Yes, but—" "Read the questions to the students just as you had planned. They'll write their answers on notebook paper. Melody will record her answers and then print them out for you." "How do you know that you won't be helping her?" Claire asks. "Because I won't be in the room," Catherine replies. "Too bad, because you might need some help." Catherine grins at her, but Claire just looks away. I tell Catherine, "Go now." I almost push her away. "Thank you." "Your mom is coming to pick you up?" "Yes." "Good luck, Melody. You're my champ no matter what. You got that?" "Got it." I wave as she leaves the room. Mr. Dimming shrugs his shoulders and continues with the directions. "There are 100 quiz questions. I'll read each prompt one time and each answer only once. You will have 30 seconds to record each response. Please write only the capital letter A, B, C, D, and sometimes E. Are there any questions?" Claire's hand shoots up. "Yes." "How do we know Melody doesn't have any answers stored in her machine? Us normal people aren't allowed to use computers." "Why are you so worried about Melody?" Rose answers before Mr. D has a chance to. "Are you scared she'll get a higher score than you?" "No way." "Well, then be quiet so we can get started." Mr. D smiles at Rose. "Students, get your 2 sheets of paper out. 1 to write on, 1 to cover your answers. We believe in honesty, but an extra sheet of paper can't hurt." Everyone shuffles to find paper and pens. Then a feeling of quiet expectation falls over the room. Mr. Dimming unseals the official test and opens to the first page. "Let us begin," he says, his voice suddenly sounding very official. "Number 1. The capital of Colombia is A. Brussels, B. Santiago, C. Bogota, D. Jakarta." He pauses while everybody scribbles their answers. I punch in the letter C. Good old Mrs. V and her capital quiz cards. "Number 2, Mr. Dimming continues. Gerontology is the study of A. The elderly, B. Gerunds, C. Germs, D. Rocks and jewels. I punch in the letter A. So far, so good. The test continues for the next 30 minutes or so. He asks questions about atoms and clouds, about fish and mammals, about famous religions, and dead presidents. Some of the questions I'm sure of. I guess on a couple. The math questions make me sweat. This is the hardest, most exciting thing I've ever done. The very last question is a killer. "And number 100, Mr. D says, relief in his voice. "The small intestine of an average adult, if stretched out vertically, would measure about how long? A. 8 to 12 inches. B. 1 to 2 feet. C. 5 to 7 feet. D. 20 to 23 feet. I punch in the letter D, hoping I've guessed right, and breathe a sigh of relief. It was over. "Pencils down, please," Mr. Dimming tells us. "Make sure your name is on your paper and then cover it with a cover sheet and pass it up to me." As everyone gathers papers and scribbles their names hurriedly, I push the print button on my MetaTalker. A slim sheet with my answers emerges from the side. Mr. Dimming walks back to where I sit and rips it off. He doesn't look at me. "We're done here," he tells the class. "Your parents were told you what time to pick you up, but if anyone has a problem with a ride, just let me know. I won't leave the building until everyone has safely left school grounds." I am the last one out. I know my mom will probably come in to get me, but I want to leave on my own power. I turn on my chair and wheel around to face the door. "Melody," Mr. D calls. I spin back around. "I hope you were not discouraged by all this. I was only trying to protect you from being hurt." "I'm okay," I tell him. "I'll be announcing the scores and the members of the team tomorrow. I just don't want you to be disappointed." I understand. Then I ask him, "Top 8 scores get picked?" "Yes. 4 team members and 4 alternates." I am tired and I've started to drool a little. I'm sure he thinks I'm a dunce, a sloppy one at that. I feel like the red stain on my blouse is screaming. "Okay, good night." "Good night, Melody. See you tomorrow. And, you might want to wipe your mouth." I rub the sleeve of my shirt across my lips, the tomato-stained shirt. I can imagine what he is thinking. I almost bump into my mom as she hurries in. "How'd you do, sweetie?" she asks breathlessly. "Okay, I guess." To Mr. D, she says, "Thank you for giving her the opportunity to participate." "My pleasure, Mrs. Brooks. Melody is a delight, and I'm amazed she's been able to achieve as well as she has." Yeah, right. A delight with drippy lips and a dirty shirt. "Let's go, Mom," I type. I need to go to the bathroom and I want to get home. Chapter 21. Going to the bathroom at school just plain sucks. I have to be taken out of my chair, lifted onto the toilet, and held there so I don't fall. Then someone has to wipe me when I'm finished. It's not so bad when it's Mom, but it's awful when a classroom aide has to do that for me. She is required by law to wear plastic gloves, I guess in case I have some kind of infection or disease. It's completely embarrassing. I don't usually have to go first thing in the morning, but I'm so nervous on Tuesday, I have to ask to be taken twice. Then I go to all my inclusion classes. The students who tried out for the quiz team can't stop chatting about the test. I listen to every word. I couldn't believe how easy it was, Connor boasts. I bet I got a higher score than you did, Claire says, her voice cocky. I thought the geography questions were off the map, Rose adds. I never even heard some of those countries. Jessica just shakes her head. The math part wasn't much fun either. I can't believe we even care about a dumb test for a quiz team, Rodney comments. Because the competition is on television, man, Connor replies. Big time TV coverage here in town, and if we make the finals, we go to D.C., where it will be televised all over the country. If we win, we get to be on Good Morning America. My grandma in Philly can watch me, and my auntie in Frisco, I'll be famous. What do you mean, if we win, Connor? Claire asks him. Don't you mean when we stomp the competition? Yeah, for sure. I already bought a new suit for when I'm on TV. Rose rolls her eyes. I thought this was a team contest, Connor, she reminds him. Hey, the team would be nothing without me. He holds up his hand up in the air for high fives. I listen quietly from the back of the room. When the bell rings to indicate that it's time for Mr. Dimming's class, my palms feel sweaty. Catherine pushes me into the room and whispers into my ear, Relax, you rock. Mr. Dimming gets the class quiet and takes attendance. Why do teachers go so slowly when you want something from them? Finally, he removes a sheet of paper from his briefcase. I graded your quiz team test last night, and since many of those who tried out for the competition team are in this class, I'm going to share the results with you now. The teachers of the other classes who have students who tried out have been given the same list and are at this moment reading the results to them. So read the list, Shauner shouts, getting up from his desk. If classroom behavior were a determining factor for making the team, Connor, you might be in trouble. Please quiet down for a moment. That shuts him up and he sits down heavily. First of all, I'm very proud of all of you who took the test. It was quite challenging and you all did extremely well. Rose raises her hand. Yes, Rose. Can we see the questions and answers later so we know where we messed up? Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we'll use this test as a learning tool to study for the real competition. But anyone is free to see the test and check their responses. Please read the names, Connor says, as politely as I've ever heard him. Mr. Dimming smiles. Okay, will do. I shall read the alternates first. 2 fifth graders. 2 from 6th grade. Amanda Firestone, Molly North, Elena Rodriguez, Rodney Mosul. My heart falls to my shoes, which is not quite to the floor, but close. How could I have missed so many questions? Maybe my thumb slipped and I pushed the wrong letters. Catherine squeezes my hand. Molly and Rodney screech with joy. Amanda and Elena are 6th graders. Connor is noticeably quiet. And now, Mr. Dimming continues, the names of the 4 students who scored the highest and will represent our school at the local competition downtown. The alternates will accompany them and will be called upon if any of the team members are unable to participate in any way. Are we ready? Ready, Connor says softly. I notice he has his fingers crossed behind his back. I'm proud to report that all 4 are from our classroom. He pauses. To know all the finalists are from 5th grade blows me away. Way to go. We torch 6th grade? Awesome, Rodney says. Now read the names before Connor wets his pants. Connor reaches over and smacks Rodney on the back of his head. Mr. Dimming takes a deep breath. The top 4 scorers and members of our quiz team will be Connor Bates. Connor interrupts him with a wild, whooping cheer, of course. And if I may continue, Mr. D says over his glasses, we are also pleased to welcome Claire Wilson and Rose Spencer. Claire's smile is smug. But that's only 3, Connor says, looking around in confusion. I can count, Connor, Mr. Dimming replies dryly. So, who's the last person on the team? Molly asks. Earthquake report. TV weather guy feels some strange activity coming from a local school. Could it be a girl's heartbeat pounding too hard? Mr. Dimming clears his throat. I must apologize. I think we have all underestimated a member of our class. Earthquake report. This is the big one. He continues. In my 15 years of running this competition, I have never had a student make a perfect score on the practice test. It is designed to be challenging, to weed out the weaker candidates. In a word, it's hard. Tell me about it, Connor mumbles. When Melody Brooks took that little practice quiz with us last week, I thought it was a lucky accident that she did so well. But yesterday, Melody blew us all away. She got every single question right. He pauses, making sure everyone is taking this in, and then he says, all of them. Earthquake report. Walls are tumbling everywhere. So she's on the team? Rose asks, disbelief in her voice. Yes, she's on the team. But, we'll all look weird, Claire counters. Everybody will stare at us. I am not going to have any kind of that talk. Do you understand? Mr. D says sternly. I'm very proud of Melody. I regret I underestimated her, and I'm glad to have her here on our team. Earthquake report. Call the paramedics. A girl in 5th grade is about to explode. Everybody in the class turns to look at me. Catherine gives me a hug. Rose flashes me a smile, and I try not to kick and drip and make my classmates sorry that I'll be on the team with them. Will the Whiz Kids folks be cool with Melody? Molly asks. Mr. Dimming looks thoughtful. I'll contact the quiz team officials and let them know about our special circumstances, he says. But that's no concern of yours. Now listen up. Team members will meet every day after school for 2 hours for the next 2 weeks, right up until the first competition. Practice sessions are mandatory. Here is paperwork for your parents to read and sign. I need it back tomorrow. Earthquake report. Expect big aftershocks. Nothing like this has ever been seen before. The more I think about it, the more excited I get. Television, pressure, people looking at me. I can feel myself getting tense and tight. My arms and legs start doing the tornado spastic dance. My head jerks. I try not to, but I screech just a little. Everybody turns at the sound. I can see Molly and Claire jerking their hands and kicking their legs and making crazy noises. A few people giggle. Mr. Dimming's face grows tight. I aim all my energy at my thumb and point to go. Catherine gets the message and hurries me out of there. I want to find a hole and hide in it. All right, we're going to stop there. And next time we will begin at chapter 22. See you next time.